to the cloud. All right, go ahead.
Hey everyone, welcome to this number 56 webinar on the Secret Doctrine. Okay, I do this part of it for those people who come in on Zoom so they can kind of see where they are in the scheme of things. So this webinar series is available on makara.us under the subheadings Moria Federation webinars, then webinar series in progress as shown here. Let's see, we have, are these, the seed groups is over now, isn't it? Did he
The
do his
seed, right, the seed group's just finished. I need to move that down to prior. And Dwayne Carpenter is getting ready to start a new one. The esoteric healing services are still there. I don't have all the latest ones published there, but they're still going and they are on YouTube. So
you may give Dwayne Carpenter a listen. He's a fascinating guy. I know many of you probably know who he is, but he's a sacred geometrist and kind of a magician in his way of understanding and relating what he knows. Very, very interesting guy. So he's going to do a series. Do you know what it's going to be called?
it's going to be on symbols, but I don't know exactly what it's going to be called. Hopefully he's going to start the second Saturday of July, but he hasn't given me all of his information yet. So,
okay. Well, heads up, keep aware. We'll let you know too on this series right before he gets underway. Okay, so if you're looking for this series, you can find it on YouTube and just do a search to pull up this series. Sometimes it's really useful to, especially when I come into a slide that has a ton of information on it, but we can't sit there and for 5 minutes. So you can go back and study it as you like. Okay, this month in our reading of Old Diary Leaves, Colonel Olcott meets a man, a Scottish guy, who is gifted with the ability of seeing thought currents. And since Colonel Olcott was all about proving these hypotheses, then he really puts him to the test. It's fascinating reading. So could we get a reader, please?
I'll start off. Mr. Ewan, inherits from his Scottish forebears the gift of second sight, not one that he can exercise at pleasure, but which comes sporadically. He finds he has it on awakening some morning. The next, it is gone and he cannot recall it at will, but must wait until it chooses to reappear. It is usually active throughout the day. At that time, I was, at the urgent request of the lady's husband, giving psychopathic treatment to a well-known literary lady, and, with her permission, one day brought Ewan with me. The lady was confined to her bed, and I treated her as she lay. Mr. Ewan was present. I made the long passes over her, downward from her chest towards her feet, not always, however, with mesmeric intention, i.e., with concentration of the will, but mechanically, yet without making the passes differently in the one case than in the other.
Do you understand this? He was faking it half the time because he's testing Ewan to see if he really can tell the difference. So that's what he's doing. Okay, next.
Greg, can you read that, please?
Yes. To my surprise, Mr. Ewan suddenly...
Hey, Greg?
Yes?
Can you turn up a bit?
Oh, sure.
Or get closer to your computer. Sometimes that does it.
All right. Just a second here. Is that better?
A little bit. Okay. I can hear you, but you're about a third the volume of BL. You want to turn Charlie Elking's video off, please? Greg?
Greg, you're unmuted. You're muted.
All right, is that better?
A little bit.
Okay.
Just sit close to your computer.
All right. To my surprise, Mr. Ewan suddenly said that he could see that my mind was not always equally bent upon the work in hand, that sometimes I made the vital fluid to flow from me, sometimes not. The difference was most palpable to his clairvoyant sight. Thereupon I put his powers to the test, but found that he could unerringly distinguish my real from my stimulated curative passes. He described it to me in this way. The patient's body was enveloped in a pale bluish aura, seemingly elastic and compressible, like a loosely inflated toy balloon. Over the pelvic region, the seat of her disease, the aura was of a yellowish color. When I made my will a curative pass with my hands, there flowed from my fingertips strong, clear streams of vital force, in color a bright and clear sapphire.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah, we started to hear you better as you read. Thank you. Okay, next up.
Scott, can you read that, please?
This strong current impinging upon the patient's pale blue aura was met with a feeble resistance from the latter, but overcoming this by its own strong rush, it mingled with the weaker aura, tinged it with its own hue, and set it into quick vibration. The result being a reinvigoration of the invalid's system and the creating of a tendency towards convalescence. I'm convinced of the accuracy of this description, and in fact, in the case under mention, the lady, instead of lying in bed for months, as her doctor had predicted she must, was up and about within the next 10 days. The improvement was so striking after even the first treatment that her medical attendant was astounded at his next visit and said she must have something uncanny about her constitution, some extra spring in her machinery that was out of the common run. This she conveyed to me in a gleeful note the next day, and said that she and her nurse were laughing together over the doctor's illusion as to the success of his remedies and his ignorance of the fact of my having treated her and thus put in the suspected spring that had worked such a wonder.
That's great. Thanks, Scott. Okay, and last one.
Karen, can you read that for us, please?
Mr. Ewan's description of the luminous appearance of a thought current was very interesting. When one concentrates his mind upon some subject, not of an exciting nature, a shimmer of light goes forth from his brain like the pulse of a light in an electrically charged cloud on a warm summer night. When, on the other hand, the mind sends its outflowing aura to a fixed spot or object, a ray darts from the brain towards its target, like the flash of lightning in a thunderstorm.
Very illuminating stuff, isn't it? We've seen from past readings how Colonel Olcott has this extraordinary gift of healing. He discovered it just a couple of years earlier and became famous all throughout India for his healing abilities. But then we have this Scottish Mr. Ewan who can actually see the process. That's all in all pretty incredible. Okay, last month we continued our study of Kuan Yin and Vash, who both represent, quote, the magic potency of occult sound in nature and ether. So it's a magic potency that has to do with the creative ability that happens through sound. It's personification of force, an energy that comes from the creator. Okay, so let's begin by rereading this passage, which we were in the middle of last time. Can we get a reader, please?
I'll do it. The explanation I'm going to give you will appear thoroughly mystical. But if mystical, it has a tremendous significance when properly understood. Our old writers said that Vash is of four kinds. See Rig Veda and the Upanishads. Valkari Vash is what we utter. Every kind of Valkari Vash exists in its Mahayama. Further, in its Pasyanti, and ultimately in its para form. The reason why this pranava is called Vash is this, that the four principles of the great cosmos correspond to these four forms of Vash. Maja is said of something whose commencement and end are unknown, and para means infinite. These expressions all relate to infinitude and to division of time. I'm not sure what next.
Okay, and thanks, Fred. Is this your first time here?
No, I've been a few times, but I've never read.
Oh, okay. Well, welcome, to the reading side of things. I appreciate it. Okay, any thoughts or questions? This is, there's some technical terms here. We've covered the idea, and we're gonna be looking again at this classification of Vash in just a moment. So let's see here. Hang on a sec. So this paragraph that we just read is one long quote from Subaro's lecture on the Bhagavad Gita. So, okay, first we have our old writers said that Vash is of four kinds. See Rig Veda and the Upanishads. Vaikari Vash is what we utter. Every kind of Vaikari Vash exists in Madhyama, further in its Pasyanti, and ultimately in its para form. Here are the four levels of Vash. We have, as you can see, Vaikari Vash, the sound and speech comprehensible through our senses. Madhyama, the light, sound, and number that issues from the logos. Actually, you know what? I should read this from the bottom up, because the para Vash, which is the phenomena in its most noumenal sense, the causal level of this phenomena called the word or sound as it acts as a creative agent, is called the latent verbum, one with para Brahman, right? Then the Pasyanti level is the verbum on the plane of the logos itself. Remember that idea of this being Vash, being the mother, the wife, and the daughter of the logos? Well, this is how that works. You have the mother being at the level of para, that is, all creation comes through this sound aspect, right? This great energy that comes from the first logos. And then you have the verb on the plane of the logos itself, that would be the wife aspect, right? Equal to, but that feminine aspect of the logos. And then you have the light, sound, and number that issues from the logos. That would be like the daughter aspect. And then we have this lowest aspect, which is the sound and speech that's comprehensible to our senses. Okay. Each more material level of Vash has its being and its higher corresponding level, right? So you have Vaikari Vash that's included within the Madhyama. In other words, it's an aspect of that which issues from the the logos. And then that aspect is within the Pasyanti, which is the verbum on its own plane, and that it is all included within Paravash, right? Um, much like personalities have their being in our souls, which in turn have their being in our monads. So you can use that as a way of understanding it. Okay, next up, any questions about that, by the way? Do you have any? We've gone over this, but it's, it's elusive. The Hindu terminology can be hard to remember. Okay.
Yes, Greg's got his hand up.
Yeah, Greg.
Yeah, can you hear me better this time?
You're still pretty light, but I can hear you.
All right, so I was thinking about these things in terms of their different levels of sound, and I guess I try to make a correlation with how we interact with the Davidic kingdom, and each of these levels of sound is going to be understood at the level of the plane of the Davidic kingdom that is being worked out.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Yeah, I think that's true. And it's not just sound. I mean, we think of it as sound because it's in its lowest sense is sound and speech. But you just go one notch up and you have light, sound, and number. And
It's
this
like
is,
they're
I think,
merged. Yeah, they
right.
merge because light and sound, most
Yeah.
scientific approaches would say that they're slightly different. But when you look at the Madhyama and then the Paravash, which is everything. So when you take the light sound, then you're actually, and the logos and all that kind of stuff, it's a merging of all these sounds. And because of it, it carries both light and vibration in a sense,
Yeah.
which is then reflected downward to our level of Vikari Vash.
Exactly. Yeah, Vakari Vash, you could also have the equivalent in light, whatever that would be, but it's the emanative of outer result of a higher vibratory quality. I find especially the Madhyama is where we actually get some information. It's beyond that. It's not really, we have here latent, that is to say causal, not expressed, right? But here, this is especially interesting to me because when you include number, then you're including, all those matrices, all that sacred geometry that is part of the emanatory effect of the logos, right? It's how the logos creates, basically, the means by which creation is done. And we get a just tiny insight with this listing, Okay. Let's see, where the heck am I? All right. So next, the footnote here, which is Madhyama said of something whose commencement and end are unknown. And para means infinite. These expressions all relate to infinitude and to division of time. Right. So you can see how time comes into being in concord with space. Three-dimensional space is one aspect of that space, one of the lower aspects of that space. And the sound expression changes in accordance with that. So when come back here, when time, I would say Paravash is completely beyond time altogether. And it pre-exists time. And the plane of the logos itself is the instigating of that time-space continuum, because the logos is the creator. Of course, it depends. Are we talking here about the sevenfold original third logos who initiates all creation? And you could say he does that, or it does that by means of this level of sound, light, and number, right? Or are you talking about our solar logos, and there would be an equivalent being at that level. In both cases, their impulse to create also initiates time in a way, right? Okay, let's see what else here. So Madhyama Vash, let me get back here. The light, sound, and number that issues from the logos is ruled by time, even though the cycles that govern these emanations are inconceivably long from a human perspective. On the other hand, the para state of Vash, the source of Madhyama, is like Parbrahm, beyond time. Okay, next, the reason why this pranava is called Vash is this, that the four principles of the great cosmos correspond to these forms of Vash. Well, we talked about that a little bit, how that works. So first, I'd like to bring this quote from the Theosophical Glossary, which will familiarize us with pranava, which is really a fascinating concept in itself. So could we get a reader for this, please?
Robert, can you do that, please?
Sure. Pranyava, from Sanskrit, from pranu, to utter a droning or humming sound, as during the proper pronunciation of the word om or om. The mystical sacred syllable om or om, pronounced by Brahmins, yogis, and others during meditation. In Vedanta philosophy and the Upanishads, used in another sense. In one sense, pranava represents the macrocosm, and in another sense, the microcosm. The reason why this pranava is called Vash is this, that these four principles of the great cosmos correspond to these four forms of Vash, Vaikari, Madhyama, Pasyante, Para. These are called the four matras of pranava. The fact that this term is given to the mystical sacred syllable and that it signifies a droning or humming sound shows that anciently the word was uttered aloud, although in secret whenever possible. Modern Brahmins, however, are apt to condemn the vocal utterance of their sacred syllable and sometimes assert that it should be uttered in silence, i.e. in the mind.
Okay, that's Theosophical Glossary. Now, this other little quote is from the Secret Doctrine. Go ahead, if you would, Robert.
Okay, sure. Pranava, like Om, is a mystic term pronounced by the yogis during meditation. Of the terms called, according to exoteric commentators, Vyaritis, or Om, Bur, Bhuva, Sva, Om, earth, sky, heaven. Pranava is the most sacred, perhaps. They are pronounced with breath suppressed.
Okay, so you get a sense, just from this idea of a droning or humming, that one who is able to do this effectively is able to verbalize the quality aspect of Vash, right? Which at this level would be Vaikari, right? This level of Vash, because it's literally being spoken. But it seems to underlie and give potency to the pronunciation of a sacred word like Om or Aum. That's what I'm getting from this, Let's see. Whereas the Theosophical Glossary identifies pranava with Om, HPB seems to suggest that pranava is a higher form of the sacred word. Like this idea of pronouncing with breath suppressed. I mean, literally you can't do that. You can't not breathe while you're pronouncing something. So it suggests a very magical process of focalizing the sound through a known sacred word. And the pranava, to me anyway, seems to be that aspect of that sacred focus. Mysterious. Okay, any thoughts or questions about this? Okay, let's get back to Subaru's statement. The reason why this pranyava is actually the pronunciation, pranyava is called vash, is this, that the four principles, well, we've read this now 3 times. This quote from 5 Years of Theosophy details the 4 principles of the cosmos that Subaru associates with Vas. I'm going to read this down here. And as I read this, follow along in the chart. It'll help you better understand the correlations. So the pranava, can you see my cursor, BL?
Yes.
Okay, good. So the pranava resolve into 4 separate entities or matras, shown up here, which correspond to the 4 avashtas. Here are the avashtas, states of consciousness. Jagrata avashta, which is waking consciousness, svapna avashta, dreaming, sushupti avashta, deep sleep, and turiya avashta, nirvana. Okay. 2, the 4 states of Brahman, Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshvara, and Sadashiva. 3, the 4 aspects of Parabrahman, Sthula, Shukshma, Vija, and Shakshi. The 4 stages of the sacred word, finally, Vaikari, Madhyana, Madhyama, Pasyanti, and Paravash. Okay, so it would be very fascinating to we knew a little more. We've gone through what these stages of the Vash are. So there's a way of correlating all these concepts. For instance, the problem is so much of it is in Hindu that it doesn't mean much in the original Hindu, but you can, through the translations, that earth, waking consciousness, the gross aspect of Parabrahman is that the sound and speech comprehensible to our senses. And I'll just do the second one. Sky, the dreaming aspect, Vishnu, which is going to be like Vishnu, the subtle aspect of Parabrahman is the light, sound, and number that issues from the logo. So you get how you could make these correlations, that Om is the ultimate, is the Paravash. I see a hand raised there, so. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, please, Robert.
This phrase, aspects of Parabrahman, seems strange to me because I would have thought Parabrahman didn't have aspects.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That this is like an oxymoron. Aspects of Parabrahman, but this is a copy. This isn't mine. It's a copy from a chart. So more accurately, I would say aspects of Brahman, not Parabrahman would be more accurate. But see, here we have states of Brahman, and we have this. So, yeah, aspects of Brahman and states of Brahman, I think would be more accurate, because I totally agree with you. I would have to, go back and look at this chart in context to see why this was chosen, but that's a good call. Parabrahman is completely unconditioned. It is be-ness, the absolute. It's what we spent the whole first part of this series on, right? And the very first stanzas were all about this level of being, not even being, but just be-ness. So good call, Robert. Anyone else?
Francis, I just wanted to mention that this phrase Om Bur Bhuva Sva, what I'm,
As far, yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry, I'm saying that wrong. That's the first, the opening part of the Gayatri. It's, in Hindu.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if it's like an address to all levels of being, that's why it's.
It sounds to me like that. And of course, that's what our translation is for students in Meditation Quest. O thou who givest sustenance to this universe,
Right.
from whom all things proceed, to whom all things return. So.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Yeah. Yeah. Levels of being. And you can see they're progressive here, of course. So from the top down, it would be Om Shvar Bhuva Bhur, and that's probably how it's listed because it's usually the way it is. Okay, so we can assume that when an adept sounds one of the 4 matras, which are these, of the pranava, which is the overall, that the quality of vibration of that matra aligns him or her with the corresponding state of consciousness, which are described in all these levels. This is just a peek into the occult science of sound, right? Which has really been taken to a high level in the Hindu tradition and in Tibet, of course. So very esoteric stuff. Okay, next up, can we get a reader, please?
Yes. Tia, can you read that for us, please?
Now the whole manifested solar system exists in its sukshma form in the light or energy of the logos. Because its energy is caught up and transferred to cosmic matter, the whole cosmos in its objective form is Vakari Vash. The light of the logos is the Madhyama form, and the logos itself, the Pasyanti form, and the Parabrahm, the Para form or aspect of that Vash. It is by the light of this explanation that we must try to understand certain statements made by the various philosophers to the effect that the manifested cosmos is the verbum manifested as cosmos. See lecture on the Bhagavad Gita referred to above.
Okay, so this should be more understandable based on what we just went through, right? How this 4-fold division that's been described here. So first we have, now the whole manifested solar system exists in its sukshma form in the light or energy of the logos. Sukshma means subtle and is part of the second or dreamlike stage of consciousness whose correspondences are highlighted here, including Vishnu, the preserver aspect, right? Next, now the whole manifested solar system exists in a sukshma form in the light of energy of the logos because its energy is caught up and transferred to cosmic matter. So sukshma, the light of the logos, is quote unquote transferred to the first or most material stage, as shown here. In addition, the solar system must remain in sukshma because it is continuously engaged in this transference of energy that goes on all throughout manifestation. You have this transference. Possibly being caught up is another way of saying that manifestation anchors logoic consciousness, much as our incarnation anchors our soul consciousness, thus placing the sukshma aspect of the solar system in a nurturing, life-sustaining role, as well as providing a bridge to higher realms of awareness. This corresponds with the Hindu concept of Vishnu, the sustainer. So there's a relationship set up here between a causal manifest relationship that works both ways. It can also act as a bridge back to the higher stage or state of consciousness. Next, the whole cosmos in its subjective form is Vaikari Vash. The light of the Logos is the Madhyama form, and the Logos itself is the Pasyanti form, and Parabram, the Para form or aspect of Vash. This statement from Subaru is the source of the info on the far right two columns of this chart. This fourfold expression of the word is the active principle in the tetractys, which is in turn symbolized by the tetragrammaton. So these levels of manifestation could be said to correspond with the levels within the tetractys, right? It's said that the tetractys represents all that is. And in a sense, you have that same correlation in the sound, light, number aspect of Vash. And this is the tetragrammaton version of that. Any thoughts about that? Okay. Okay, any questions on anything in HBB's commentary on verse 1? We were towards the end of it when we started this webinar, so. Okay, in that case, let's take a look at the verse itself. First, by the power of the Mother of Mercy and Knowledge, Kuan Yin. So Kuan Yin, the Chinese version of Madhyama Vash, is everybody follow that, right? The equal to the Logos, right? Is the Mother of Mercy and Knowledge because she personifies the energy or Shakti of the Logos, the feminine creative aspect. She is the verbum or voice of God, literally, the quote, magic potency of occult sound in nature and ether, unquote, by which the world of form is nurtured and sustained in its highest manifested sense. Any thoughts about that? Any questions? Okay. Next, the triple of Kuan Shai Yin. Okay, Kuan Shai Yin, who is often confused with Kuan Yin, is the Logos itself, the Chinese dragon of wisdom, the father aspect, who, in contradistinction to Kuan Yin, has, quote, no direct relation to the objects of sense. That's the difference. The Kuan Yin is the means or the bridge to those who would cognize the Logos. It's that bridge. Whereas Kuan Shai Yin has no contact, no direct relation to the objects of sense. So Kuan Yin being the triple of Kuan Shai Yin refers to her energetic relationship to him, being metaphorically his mother, wife, and daughter. That's the triple. For the same energy that brought the Logos into being also sustains and emanates through him. Any thoughts about that? Questions? Okay, next, residing in Kuan Yin Tian. So Kuan Yin Tian means the melodious heaven of sound, which is the music of the spheres and source of all singular expressions of the word, of light, of geometric matrices, of number, and thus equivalent to the para aspect of Vash. Next, the whole last of it, Fohat, the breath of their progeny, the son of the sons, having called forth from the lower abyss the elusive forms of Xian Chang, our universe, and the seven elements. HPB doesn't directly comment on this part of the verse during her commentary, but she does say this earlier in the SD, actually. So could we get a reader for this, please?
Ann Parker, can you read that for us? Oops, she's not here anymore. Ann Peterson, can you read that for us, please?
From the purely occult and cosmical Fohat, the son of the suns, the androgynous energy resulting from this light of the Logos, manifests in the plane of the objective universe as the hidden, as much as the revealed electricity. Evolution is commenced by the intellectual energy of the Logos, not merely on account of the potentialities looked up in Mula Prakriti. This light of the Logos is the link between objective matter and the subjective thought of Esvara or Logos. It is called in several Buddhist books Fohat. It is the one instrument with which the Logos works.
Thank you. And so key here is the fact that that Fohat is an androgynous energy resulting from the light of the Logos. He is thus, in esoteric parlance, the son of the mother aspect of Vash, the verbum. Only Fohat can bind spirit and matter and thus bring into being our universe and the elements that comprise it. As mentioned before, the 7 elements sequentially appear in conjunction with the rounds. Thus, in this 4th round, there are 4 elements: earth, water, air, and fire, with the 5th just beginning to appear. Okay, any thoughts about this before we move on? Interesting that Fohat, as the child of, describes Fohat as the child of Kuan Yin and the material body of nature, as the quote, son of the sun, which means son of the Logos, right? And thus also of Kuan Yin. Fohat is the progeny of the 2 aspects of the Logos, Quan Shai Yin and Kuan Yin, the child of their frictions. See, do I have this written? No, I don't know what happened to that. Suggests fire by friction, or the fire in its 3rd aspect, of which Fohat is the agent. It's always a 3rd principle quality, this Fohat. So, you know, I would be hard pressed to describe the difference between in terms of the activity of Fohat compared to Vash. You know, they're so similar to me. But, you know, Vash seems to need the Fohatic impulse to actually manifest in its lower levels, though you could see how para Vash could stand on its own outside of any kind of active Fohatic process. But they're very, very deeply related, as is Fohat and Mahat, you know, which is the divine ideation turned into consciousness, or extended forward, impressed on matter in such a way that consciousness becomes possible.
Francis?
Yeah.
Greg says, isn't the son of the sun also, in terms of a treatise on cosmic fire, equivalent to solar fire, representative of the 2nd ray in manifest?
Let me think about that. I'm trying to get the sun aspect is 2nd ray inherently. So that idea that the 2nd aspect is birthed from the 1st, and that the 1st aspect is itself, you know, like in the case of our solar system, is a 2nd ray being, and so is therefore participates in the ultimate sonship you could have in that sense son of the son. In fact, you would really have son of the son of the son of the son. You just have to, at some point, decide what is source. Within our solar ring pass knot, we call the solar logos the first aspect, even though it is itself a second ray being emanating the second ray, and is one of 7 solar systems that emanate the 7 rays. So in that sense, it's definitely a quote unquote sun, S-O-N. So yeah, good point, Robert. Any other? I hope that answered your question. Anyone else? Okay, any final thoughts or questions on verse 1? All right, let's see what all right, some reason I have this outside my notes. So let's take a look at what Manly Hall has to say about verse 1. It's kind of fascinating, I find. If we could get a reader for the right column, please.
Vivian, can you please read that right column?
Don't worry about the find part. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. By means of the invisible, concealed mother of nature, Kuan Yin, and the material body of nature, her consort, and Fohat, the child of their frictions, the shadow of the material universe was called forth out of the lower abyss, and the 7 material elements appeared as crystallizations of their spiritual causes. The previous stages discussed were invisible, and while they dealt with substances, these substances were too fine and attenuated to be cognized by such senses as we possess today. The subtle elements of nature were moved long before the dense physical particles could be made to respond.
Thank you. So, any thoughts about this? It's interesting that MPH describes Fohat as the child of Kuan Yin and the material body of nature. That's the quote, son of the sun, which we were just talking about, which means son of the logos. Fohat is the progeny of the 2 aspects. We talked about this. Okay.
Robert's got his hand up.
Go, Robert.
Can we go back a page?
You bet.
The Manly thing. It looks like Manly has flipped the feminine, the mother and the father in this first paragraph. In other words, if the father is the material body of nature, but before in our reading, it was the mother that was the material body of nature, unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, well, actually, according to HPB, Fohat is the son of the 2 aspects of the logos, right?
Right.
Kuan Yin and Kuan Shai Yin, as opposed to the material body of nature. Yeah. The material, see, Kuan Yin and the material body of nature, her consort. Right. Yeah. It's like he's flipped down an aspect, hasn't he? It's like this represents the 2nd and 3rd, and there's something to that. There's something to that. If you look at the 3rd aspect in its primordial sense as being, the father of Fohat, but yeah, I like HPB's interpretation better. But I love this phrase, the child of their frictions.
Yeah, that's the censored version of.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, you don't read the footnote, folks. Okay, good one. All right. Any other thoughts about this? Okay, let's go on then to verse 2. Which reads, the swift and radiant one produces the 7 Leia, centers, against which none will prevail, to the great day be with us, and seats the universe on these eternal foundations, surrounding Dzyan Chan, remember that meant universe, with the elementary germs. So it's definitely in high stanza form there. So let's see what HPB's commentary on this. So starting with the A section, which references the swift and radiant ones produce the 7 Laya. So first the footnote, which is right off of the word Laya, from the Sanskrit Laya, the point of matter where every differentiation has ceased. Interesting, puzzling, but we'll discover more as we read the commentary. Can we get a reader, please?
Trudy, can you read that for us, please?
The 7 Layu, is that right?
Layu or Layu,
Layu.
I'm not sure which, so that's fine.
Centers are the 7 0 points, using the term zero in the same sense as chemists do, to indicate a point of which in esotericism the scale of reckoning of differentiation begins. From the centers, beyond which esoteric philosophy allows us to perceive the dim metaphysical outlines of the 7 suns of life and light, the 7 logoi of the Hermetic and all other philosophers, begins the differentiation of the elements which enter into the constitution of our solar system. It has often been asked that was the exact definition of Fuad and his powers and functions, as he seems to exercise those of a personal God as understood in the popular religions. The answer has just been given in the comment of Stanza 5, as well said in the Bhagavad Gita lectures. The whole cosmos must necessarily exist in the one source of energy from which this light forward emanates.
Okay, first up, the 7 Layu centers are the 7 0 points. So to shed light on that, let's read this quote from the Secret Doctrine. Reader, please.
When Fohat is said to produce 7 Laya centers, it means that for formative or creative purposes, the great law, theosists may call it God, stops, or rather modifies its perpetual motion on 7 invisible points within the area of the manifested universe. The great breath digs through space, 7 holes into Laya to cause them to circumgyrate during Manvantara.
Okay, so during creation, the Logos creates these 7 holes in Laya. The great breath digs through space, 7 holes, and then Fohat takes it from there and diversifies from that point. So these 7 points in space, or 7 holes, those are the Laya centers, right? And they have the quality of circumgyrating during a Manvantara. This is really abstract stuff, but I find it quite interesting. And then one more quote. Let's see, wait a minute. Hang on a sec. So next we have, sorry guys. Oh, yeah. So let's read this from the Secret Doctrine Dialogues. And these can be seen, by the way, these first subplanes on the Adi plane as, within our solar system at least, those, let's see, going back to this, those seven great holes in space. They're like the Adi planes of, or the 0 points, as is described here, right? I don't know why I have that there. Over here. The 0 points for each subplane of the cosmic physical plane. And our Kitely, who often interfaces with Blavatsky, asks more about this Laya Center. So can we get a reader for this, please?
Scott, can you read that for us, please?
Mr. B. Kitely, in connection with the 7 relative Laya points, are we to conceive of matter existing simultaneously on all the 7 planes? Or does it pass through the 7 Laya centers from one state to another, for only relatively to our perceptions, or to the perceptions of beings on the other planes? Madam Blavatsky, during Mahapralaya, there are no planes of matter, of course, as nothing exists, for the absolute Laya point is infinite. During Manvantara, the 7 planes of matter emanate, the one from the other in a regular order and succession, and embraces very naturally untold series of eons, with the exception of Manvantaric deities, a mystery, if you please. The beings on other planes must come down in the natural order of evolution and to our plane someday. All beings begin and end at the Laya point. Happy those who merge into it. I wish to goodness I was one of them. Okay, where they will have no rebirth during that Manvantara. They begin on the higher plane and descend in regular sequence from plane to plane, the planes of all being pari passu with their descent. And let us add, these planes of divine substance and consciousness are but the creations of these very beings. Now do you understand? From the first, the highest, to the 7th, or the lowest state of consciousness.
Okay, any thoughts about this? Next up. So 7 Laya centers are the 7 0 points, using the term 0 in the same sense the chemists do, to indicate a point at which in esotericism the scale of reckoning of differentiation begins. So let's read about this.
Karen, can you read
Go ahead.
that?
We have said that Laya is what science may call the 0 point or line, the realm of absolute negativeness, or the one real absolute. I'm not able to see the bottom line.
Oh, really? Oh, it's probably because you're okay. The absolute force, the noumenon of, go ahead.
The 7th state of that which we ignorantly call and recognize as force, or again, the noumenon of undifferentiated cosmic substance, which is itself, I can't read the rest.
Okay, you can drag that toolbar to another part of your screen if that's what's obstructing you. You can just grab anywhere on the black and drag it to, if you're on a computer. If you're on a phone, I can't help you. I don't know.
No, I'm on the computer, but I'm not able to do that.
Just click and drag it. Okay. Let's see. So let me read where you were.
It's the bottom line that I can't read.
But I want to get context here. Or again, the noumenon of undifferentiated cosmic substance, which is itself an unreachable and
unknowable object to finite perception, the root and basis of all states of objectivity and subjectivity too, the neutral axis, not one of the
many aspects, but its center. Okay. So that was a little disjointed. So let's see if we can pull it together here.
The diagram is fabulous.
Isn't it? God, I
Yeah.
love this Taurus. It's
Yeah.
This is one thing Dwayne Carpenter is known for. He has moved. He animates this Taurus in a really interesting way. But yeah, so the Laya, ultimate Laya center is the noumenon of the seventh state. That would be counting upwards, right? So the 1 and 7 before manifestation. So it'd be the noumenon of undifferentiated cosmic substance, unreachable, unknowable. Okay, thank you, Karen. Oh, I'm sorry, you can't drag the toolbar.
I haven't had this problem with the others, just this one.
No, interesting. Okay. I try to stay off of the very bottom, but maybe once in a while I'll keep that in mind, Karen, for future. All right, so let me find where we are. Next, from the centers beyond which esoteric philosophy allows us to perceive the dim metaphysical outlines of the seven suns of life and light, the seven logi of the Hermetic and all other philosophers, begins the differentiation of the elements which enter into the constitution of our solar system. These seven suns are the seven Phohatic brothers, each of which animates one of the subplanes of the cosmic physical plane. And, clearly working in concert with this Vash, this concept of Vash. And this is where I get confused as to how they are really differentiated. You could say that Phohat is always described in terms of electrical, and Vash in terms of sound and light. So maybe that's the difference. The clue is in the fact that they are charged with differentiating the elements, right? You have the 7 holes dug in space, and they are circumgyrating. And then Phohat takes it from there and differentiates the elements, an ability that comes through the mystery of electricity that Phohat embodies. And next, it has often been asked, what was the exact definition of Phohat? I bet, and his powers and functions, as he seems to exercise those of a personal god as understood in the popular religions. Since Phohat is, quote, the collectivity of intelligent forces through which cosmic ideation impresses itself on substance, thus forming the various worlds of manifestation, it's not hard to see why Phohat's activities could be mistaken for those of a personal god. But this begs the question, is there anyone who believes in or is even aware of Phohat who also believes in a personal god? Seems to me unlikely. If there is such a believer, we might say that the difference is that Phohat is a collectivity of graded electrical forces that defies anthropomorphic description. And finally, the answer has just been given in the comment on stanza 5, as well said in the Bhagavad Gita lectures. The whole cosmos must necessarily exist in the one source of energy from which this Phohatic light emanates. HBB comments on Phohat throughout stanza 5. It says given in the comment on stanza 5, but she particularly focuses on it in her commentary on verse 2. So let's take a walk down memory lane. And this is one of the pivotal. In fact, it's my go-to reference for Phohat right here. So could we get a reader for this?
Vivian, can you read that for us, please?
Phohat, being one of the most, if not the most important character in esoteric cosmogony, should be minutely described. As in the oldest Grecian cosmogony, differing widely from the later mythology, Eros is the third person in the primeval trinity, Chaos, Gaia, Eros, answering to the Kabbalistic En Sof. For chaos is space, the boundless all, Shekinah and the Ancient of Days, or the Holy Ghost. So Fohat is one thing in the yet unmanifested universe, and another in the phenomenal and cosmic world. In the latter, he is that occult, electric, vital power, which, under the will of the creative Logos, unites and brings together all forms, giving them the first impulse, which becomes in time law. But in the unmanifested universe, Fohat is no more this than Eros is the later brilliant winged Cupid or love. Fohat has naught to do with cosmos yet, since cosmos is not born, and the gods still sleep in the bosom of Father Mother. He is an abstract philosophical idea. He produces nothing yet by himself. He is simply that potential creative power in virtue of whose action the noumenon of all future phenomena divides, so to speak, but to reunite in a mystic supersensuous act and emit the creative ray. When the divine sun breaks forth, then Fohat becomes the propelling force, the active power which causes the one to become two and three on the cosmic plane of manifestation. The triple one differentiates into the many, and then Fohat is transformed into that force which brings together the elemental atoms and makes them aggregate and combine. We find an echo of this primeval teaching in early Greek mythology.
Thank you. Any questions about this? You're starting to get some understanding of this concept. It's not easy, but hopefully you're starting to get it. And I think it's in a way it's really good to study Vash at the same time as Fohat to get some sense of this great creative force, right? Not initiating force, but the means by which the initiating force creates. Okay, next up. Could we get a reader, please?
Yes, Greg, can you read that, please?
Yes. Can you hear me better now?
Oh, real good. Now you're
Yeah,
fine.
okay. Whether we count the principles in cosmos as man as 7 or only as 4, the forces of and in physical nature are 7. And it is stated by the same authority that prajna, or the capacity of perception, exists in 7 different aspects corresponding to the 7 conditions of matter, personal and impersonal God. For just as a human being is composed of 7 principles, differentiated matter in the solar system exists in 7 different conditions, Ibid. So does Fohat. He is 1 and 7, and on the cosmic plane is behind all such manifestations as light, heat, sound, adhesion, etc., and is the spirit of electricity, which is the life of the universe. You want me to read the footnote too?
Yeah, would you? Yeah.
Fohat has several meanings. See Stanza 5 commentary at Infra. He is called the builder of the builders, the force that he personifies, having formed our septenary chain.
Okay. First, whether we count the principles in cosmos and man as 7 or only as 4, the forces of and in physical nature are 7. Exoterically, humanity has 4 principles, as detailed here, which are related to 4 fundamental elements as shown on the right. But esoterically, cosmos and humanity have 7 principles. as shown here. Can we get a reader for this paragraph over here, which is this up here in the later in the Secret Doctrine?
Trudy, can you read?
Go ahead.
When the 3 and the 4 kiss each other, the quaternary joins its middle nature with that of the triangle or triad. The face of one is its plane surface, becoming the middle face of the other and becoming a cube. Then only does the cube unfolded becomes the vehicle and the number of life, the father, mother, 7.
So you have this magical process where the cube, which is the archetype of fourness, as is the square, when unfolded or revealed in its true nature, becomes sevenfold, right? It's a metaphor, but a quite valuable one. And you have a similar thing with the triangle and the square, as representing the visible and the invisible aspects of a human being. Here you have the same chart that I showed before here on the right, extended up here to show the 5th, 6th, and 7th, which is Atma Buddhi Manas. All right. Okay. So next up we have, and it is stated by the same authority that prajna, or the capacity of perception, exists in 7 different aspects corresponding to the 7 conditions of matter, personal and impersonal God. Let's read more about prajna from the last pages of the Secret Doctrine, Volume 2. Can we get a reader for this?
Robert, can you read that, please?
Just the bottom part.
Yeah.
The real esoteric 7-fold classification has all the requisites of a scientific classification. It has 7 distinct principles which correspond with 7 distinct states of prajna, or consciousness. It bridges the gulf between the objective and subjective and indicates the mysterious circuit through which ideation passes. The 7 principles are allied to 7 states of matter and to 7 forms of force. These principles are harmoniously arranged between 2 poles, which define the limits of human consciousness.
Okay, so you can see them here. The esoteric Buddhism, the rest is heavy into Hindu terminology, as well as Sanskrit. But here you have, it's more understandable. It's interesting at the monadic level, they're all Atma, right? And then you have the spiritual soul, the mind, volition, feelings, etc., Vijnana, and then Kama Rupa, and then the vehicle of prana and Sthula Sharira. And if we go back here, you can see this, right? The physical body, Sthula Sharira, the model body, which is the Linga Sharira. And then you have prana has its own vehicle, right? It's interesting. And then Kama, Manas, Buddhi, and Atman. Okay. So next up, for just as human being is composed of 7 principles, differentiated matter in the solar system exists in 7 different conditions. This chart is unique in that it correlates the 7 lokas shown on the left with the 7 subplanes of the cosmic physical plane, as illustrated in the blue books. It's way too busy. Don't worry about that. You can eventually, if you look at it for a little while, get through it. The so-called 12 rays here is a system used by a school called as Ascended Masters, but otherwise the chart is pretty useful for the correlations that it shows. Especially over here, you have these descriptions of the locas and their relative positions to the, what we know of in theosophy as the planes of the physical plane, right? We're not going to go into this, but up the middle is what you see on the that common chart in theosophy that shows up in a treatise on cosmic fire on page 117. But it's just to know that it's out there, and it's worth a look. Okay, let's see what's next. Next, so does Fohat. That is, exists in 7 conditions. He is 1 in 7, and on the cosmic plane is behind all such manifestations as light, heat, sound, adhesion, etc., and is the spirit of electricity, which is the life of the universe. Let's read about the 7-fold nature of Fohat. And don't you love this? Right? Now, they didn't call this Fohat, but to me, it's certainly suggestive of Fohat as an abstract totality and its 7 sun brothers. And also the dual serpents, it's like a caduceus and Fohat all wrapped into one. Okay, can we get a reader, please?
Tia, can you read that, please?
Bear in mind that Fohat, the constructive force of cosmic electricity, is said metaphorically to have sprung like Rudra from Brahma, from the brain of the father and the bosom of the mother, and then to have metamorphosed himself into a male and a female, in other words, polarity, into positive and negative electricity. He has 7 sons who are his brothers, and Fohat is forced to be born time after time whenever any 2 of his son brothers indulge in too close contact, whether an embrace or a fight. To avoid this, he binds together and unites those of unlike nature and separates those of similar temperaments. This, of course, relates, as any one can see, to electricity generated by friction and to the law involving attraction between 2 objects of unlike and repulsion between those of like polarity. The 7 sun brothers, however, represent and personify the 7 force of cosmic magnetism, called in practical occultism the 7 radicals, whose cooperative and active progeny are, among other energies, electricity, magnetism, sound, light, heat, cohesion, etc. Occult science defines all these as supersensuous effects in their hidden behavior and as objective phenomena in the world of senses, the former requiring abnormal faculties to perceive them. The latter are ordinary physical senses.
Okay, so interesting. Going back to, I think it was Robert, we were talking about, where did Fohat really spring from? And we had that MPH version, in both cases from Vash or Kuan Yin, the feminine aspect, but in HPB had him springing from Quan Shai Yin, or the logos itself, and the mother, whereas MPH was the nature aspect. And here you have, I think, the idea that it's from the brain or the intention of the father aspect, and the bosom of the mother suggests HPB's version. It's very fascinating to parse this. The idea that they're son brothers, of course, because they exist on the 7 subplanes of the cosmic physical plane, they are sons. One evolves out of the other sequentially, right? But they're also brothers because they're equal in their intent and effect on those 7 planes. And these are, some ways in which they manifest. Any thoughts about this?
Robert's got his hand up. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah,
Where is this sculpture from? It's amazing.
I know. I found it online, and I always show if I can get provenance, but online pictures are notorious for not revealing where they're from. And so if I don't show it, it means that I couldn't find it. And, I even have this search engine that finds other instances of an image. And sometimes you can go that way and then find what the image is that way, look up other instances. But in this case, I couldn't locate where it's from. I'd love to know which tribe this came from, but I'm sorry, I just couldn't find
They
it.
call that a tribal sculpture. I want to go to that tribe.
Yeah, I know. It's like maybe you're already a member and you just don't know it.
It's great. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Okay.
Greg says, is it correct to associate or correlate symbolically to an expression of the etheric physical vehicle from the highest level of universal logos to the most dense expression of lowest level of the dense physical or mineral kingdom?
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of your question. Is it?
Okay, Greg, you want to explain that to him, please?
Say again, Greg.
Sure. This is amazing, this figure, and the way that I think of the term etheric physical vehicle, and we get stuck in, is it the entire physical substance or is it just our representation here on Earth? But in terms of this, if we associate this concept with the top level being that of the universal logos, and then the very lowest level, or the 7th lowest level as of the mineral kingdom, that they're all part of the one etheric vehicle that we all share? Or am I completely messed up in that
Well, let's get back here to a chart. We can, oh boy, it's way back. Oh, where is it? Here, hang on a sec. See if I can find it here. Yeah, this will take us back there. So this is the chart. Hang on. All right, so the top 4 are the cosmic etheric. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we have the physical etheric here, right? This is just the framework for the dense physical adheres to. They're models of each other. This is the exact same thing happening at cosmic levels. That is to say, if you go all 7 cosmic planes of existence, this represents the etheric of that. In other words, that which is cosmic, such as the solar logos, its physical being adheres to these 4 subplanes, or is conditioned by and interpenetrated by these 4 cosmic levels. Now, I don't think I answered your question, but that's part of it. You want to frame it again?
I think you kind of answered it. I guess in terms of when we try to relate to the concept of etheric substance has multiple forms. It has multiple variations. Like at the very highest level of cosmic divine logos, that substance exists, but we cannot know it from our limited, dense physical existence. Yet all in this whole chart, we work from the divine clear down to the basic core dense physical, and is this whole thing, why might we relate it to being the whole expression of etheric substance in
No,
its,
no,
okay.
not the whole thing. No. First of all, a good handle. Okay, I'm going to back up even one further back. I want to invite you all to my the first webinar on the Secret Doctrine, not Secret Doctrine, that's what we're doing, on a treatise on cosmic fire, which starts on Friday at 5 p.m. GMT, which is like 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And the reason I bring that up now is because we're going to be starting on page 77, which is all about the etheric body, prana, cosmic etheric as opposed to systemic etheric, and human etheric, and the whole nature of it. It's absolutely fascinating read. And for any of you that would be interested, I would love to have you involved. It'd be great. So a good handle for understanding the etheric is that it is where the centers have their being and their substance. So the way of understanding the differentiation, and of course that's going to be true on cosmic levels too, is that the head center is made up of atomic substance, which is the first etheric. The heart center is made up of subatomic substance, which is the second etheric, and the throat of the third etheric, and then the fourth etheric. All the other centers are made up of that substance. So the etheric body is an intermingling of all these substances, right? All the many channels and threads of light is how they're described, that make up are an intermingling of these four substances. And then the physical body is it's a mold, the etheric, for the physical, and it exactly adheres and intermingles with the etheric. So that idea that the etheric somehow stands around or outside the physical is not accurate. They're completely interrelated and intermeshed, right? Okay. So that's a good handle, and we'll be getting into it in detail starting on Friday. Hope to see you there. Okay, let me get back to where we were. So
I put the link in the chat. The announcement should be going out hopefully in a day or two. Tui is working on it. She's working on the whole week. So
yeah, and I'm thinking, because I always want to call it constant comment, constant, what is it?
contact.
Constant contact, right? It's a really flaky system of, people have a lot of trouble with it. So I think what I'm going to do is do an email blast of everybody on my list, just to make sure that anybody interested in this series is notified, So you may get a couple of notices on that. Okay, let's go into the footnote here. Wait a minute, sorry. Yeah, here we go. Fohat has several meanings. He is called the builder of the builders. Why? Why builder of the builders? Think about that. The force that he personifies, having formed our septenary chain. Builder of the builders identifies Fohat's primordial nature, for he was instrumental in the creation not only of the third logos, but of the 7 emanations or prajapatis from that logos, who were the first builders. Okay, next up, can we get a reader, please?
Sorry about that. Karen, can you do that one? Can you see the bottom?
Yes, I can. As an abstraction, we call it Fohat, the one light. As an objective and evident reality, we speak of a septenary scale of manifestation, which begins at the upper rung with the one unknowable causality and ends as omnipresent mind and life immanent in every atom of matter. Thus, while science speaks of its evolution through brute matter, blind force, and senseless motion, the occultists point to intelligent law and sentient life, and add that Fohat is the one guiding spirit of all this. Yet he is no personal God at all, but the emanation of those other powers behind him, whom the Christians call the messengers of their God, who is in reality only the Elohim, or rather, one of the 7 creators called Elohim. And we, the messengers of the primordial sons of life and light.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, first, as an abstraction, we call Fohat the one life. This statement is given context by the previous sentence, which is Fohat is the spirit of electricity, which is the life of the universe. Fohat is the agency that fuses spirit and form, the emanation from those creative beings by which manifested life comes into being. It is not the all, the beingness or param, but is rather the, quote, spirit of electricity that makes form life possible. Next, as an objective and evident reality, we speak of a septenary scale of manifestation, which begins at the upper rung with a one unknowable causality and ends as omnipresent mind and life immanent in every atom of matter. So the highest level of Fohat is the manifesting agency of divine ideation, which is one with Parabrahm. The manifesting agency of that. And in this sense is the one unknowable causality, because it is the fundamental causal force. For further clarification, let's take a look at HPP's introductory comments on Fohat. I think it's the first reference to him. Can we get a reader, please?
The manifested universe, therefore, is pervaded by duality, which is, as it were, the very essence of its existence as manifestation. But just as the opposite poles of subjective and objective spirit and matter are but aspects of the one unity in which they are synthesized, so in the manifested universe, there is that which links spirit to matter, subject to object. This something at present, unknown to Western speculation, is called by the occultist Fohat. It is the bridge by which the ideas existing in the divine thought are impressed on cosmic substance as the laws of nature. Fohat is thus the dynamic energy of cosmic ideation, or regarded from the other side, it is the intelligent medium, the guiding power of all manifestation, the thought divine, transmitted and made manifest through the Dzyan Chohans, the architects of the visible world. Thus, from spirit or cosmic ideation comes our consciousness. From cosmic substance, the several vehicles in which that consciousness is individualized and attains to self or reflective consciousness. While Fohat, in its various manifestations, is the mysterious link between mind and matter, the animating principle electrifying every atom into life.
Okay,
And
yeah.
hold on a minute. Efrozini asks, went away. What is Fohat's relationship with the 12 creative hierarchies?
Oh, well, it would be intrinsic the 12 creative hierarchies are monads in some state of, okay, first of all, they're all monadic, and they're at various levels of awareness of their essential selfness, right? The linking principle between hierarchies is phohatic. So, for instance, there are four hierarchies associated with the human being. You have the monadic level, which is the fourth creative hierarchy. You have that Makara, or fifth hierarchy, which is connected with Capricorn and with the soul. That's the great mystery. And then you have the sixth associated with the personality, and the seventh associated with matter itself, with the material. Well, they're negatively and positively polarized to each other, right? Each lower one is negatively polarized to the one above it. The means by which that polarity is actualized is phohat, right? In other words, becomingness is possible through phohat. So not only is it involutionary, where you bind spirit to matter on the downward arc, but also evolutionally on the return path. For instance, the fifth kingdom, the fifth hierarchy, which is the kingdom of souls, is able to realize its essential self, which is the fourth hierarchy, or the monadic, through consciousness. And that consciousness is a reflection or an extension of divine ideation. And that's made possible through phohat as the carrying the principle of mahat. So I hope that helps. Okay, anyone else? It helps when considering how phohat impresses ideas on substance to remember that phohat is not just a force, but also an intelligent medium. This is why it is personified as seven brothers. If it was just, just raw force, it wouldn't have the ability to animate consciousness, but it is itself. And this is, we can learn these concepts, but actually coming into awareness of what an intelligent medium is, intelligent energy, intelligent electricity is how it's often described. Well, if you're able to do that, shoot me a line. I'd like to know about that one. It's so often we read and study the concepts in hopes that it helps us lift a veil on that next level to understand the true nature of these incredible concepts like intelligent electricity. Anyone else? Okay, next. Thus, while science speaks of its evolution through brute matter, blind force, and senseless motion, the occultists point to the intelligent law and sentient life and add that phohat is the guiding spirit of all this. Darwin's theories on evolution, put forth on the origin of the species and popularized by Herbert Spencer, who first used the phrase survival of the fittest, were all the rage when HPB was writing Secret Doctrine. Darwinism still prevailed in modern evolutionism. Ironically, Darwin was a man of deep religious convictions. No phohat in this theory, right? And finally, yet he is no personal God at all, but the emanation of those other powers behind him, whom the Christians call the messengers of their God, who in reality only the Elohim, or rather one of the seven creators called Elohim, and we the messenger of the primordial sons of light and life. Not personal, because found equally all throughout manifestation as the binding agency of spirit and matter, and yet mysteriously still an entity who is, like the Logos itself, a unity who demonstrates as a septenant, carrying the will of the Logos into manifestation. Intelligent law is formulated at the beginning of each Manvantara by the Lapika lords. Sentient life, which is governed by these laws, is implemented by Fohat. All right. Any thoughts about the Fohatic reality? Okay, next we move to the B section of the verse, which reads, referencing the Laya centers, against which none will prevail. Here we go. To the great day be with us, and seats the universe on these eternal foundations surrounding Dzyan Chan with the elementary germs. Remember, Dzyan Chan is Chinese for the universe. The commentary on this section is the briefest found in the entire Secret Doctrine. This is it. You're looking at the entire commentary. And I'll read it. It's so short. The elementary germs with which he filled Dzyan Chan, the universe, from Tianzin, the heaven of mind, literally, or that which is absolutely, are the atoms, or that which is absolute, are the atoms of science and the monads of Leibniz. So my guess is that since this stanza was translated from the Chinese, Dzyan Chan is an ancient Chinese name for the universe. The only other reference to Dzyan Chan in HB's commentary is a page back where HBB says Vash and Kuan Yin are both the magic potency of occult sound in nature and ether, which voice calls forth Dzyan Chan, the elusive form of the universe out of chaos and the seven elements. This sentence reveals how closely Kuan Yin and Fohat work. Whereas Kuan Yin is the feminine aspect and voice of the Logos, the quote, spiritual soul, the sixth principle, and the vehicle of its Lord, unquote, Fohat is the son of Kuan Yin and the Logos, who in response to the word binds spirit and matter to form the elementary germs, which are the material atoms of science. Their connection is revealed in verse 1. By the power of the Mother of Mercy and Knowledge, Kuan Yin, the triple of Quan Shai Yin, residing in Kuan Yin Tian, Fohat, the breath of their progeny, the son of the sons, calls forth from the lower abyss the elusive form of Dzyan Chan, our universe, and the seven elements. And that finishes the commentary on verse 2. Any thoughts or questions about this? Okay, let's take a look at the verse itself. Oh, we are done. It's 2:45. So that's a good starting point for next time. We'll go back through and analyze the verse next time. So again, I want to invite you for Friday's kickoff webinar on the treatise on cosmic fire. And you should be getting, hopefully, an alert in your email box.
Yeah, these will be on the second and fourth Fridays of each month, and they will alternate like Michael used to do with them with the Ask program. So the alternate Friday, it will be the dissipation of glamour. The Ask programs will be resuming maybe next week. That's what we're waiting for the announcement for. Okay, so TCF the second and fourth Fridays of each month, the first one is on the 24th. What time did you say, Francis?
5 p.m. GMT. Also, could you tell them where they can find the link?
I put it in the chat
Oh, good,
box.
good, good, good. Thank you.
Okay. And it's the same link as we had before for it. Okay. So our next meeting together will be the Secret Teaching of All Ages on the 3rd of July at 7 p.m. GMT. And our next Secret Doctrine will be on the 17th of July at 7 p.m. GMT. So we're on track with it for July for both the Secret Teaching and Secret Doctrine.
First and third Fridays. I mean, first and third Sundays. Okay, great. Thank you all. Appreciate it. It's a real privilege for me to host these. Appreciate it. See you next time.
Goodbye, everybody.